I want to go through John Bolton's record a little bit. And in a minute, I'm going to go through his record in rather fulsome fashion. We'll discuss what his actual views are and how they will impact the administration, whether we should be worried about him. The National Security Advisor, H.R. McMaster, is out. This had been rumored for legitimately half a year. One of the things that was really funny is that last week Trump tweeted out that H.R. McMaster was completely secure in his job. He also tweeted out that one of his lawyers, a guy named John Dowd, was completely secure in his job. And then that guy left. The media had reported both of them were on the outs. Trump, of course, says fake news. It turns out that was not fake news, because when Trump says fake news, it's only fake news like 40% of the time. Well, the guy who's replacing H.R. McMaster was sort of a foreign policy establishment guy. He's somebody who believed in sort of realpolitik balance of power. He tended to be relatively kind of weirdly interventionist in certain areas and non-interventionist in other. He had kind of a squishy view of the Iran deal. John Bolton's views are extraordinarily clear. John Bolton is the person who I'd wanted for Secretary of State. I think he'd be better in that role than as NSA, but I'm happy to have him inside the administration. Bolton, of course, was ambassador to the UN under George W. Bush. He is not a neocon. People have said that he's a neocon. He is not. To define neocon, there are really two definitions of neocon. Definition number one is the historical definition, which is somebody who was a lefty during the 1960s and then realized the errors of their ways. They were, in the popular phrase, mugged by reality and became more conservative. It was a specific movement of very heavily Jewish people in the 1960s, like Irving Kristol and Daniel Bell, who's not Jewish, but was a member of these. These were the neocons in the 1970s, the people who had shifted over to the other side. Bolton was always a conservative. So by that definition, he's not a neocon. The other definition that's used is about people like Paul Wolfowitz, who are very into nation building, the idea that we're supposed to go into Iraq, knock over Saddam, and then stay there and build up the nation. That was actually not something that Bolton suggested doing. He said we had to get rid of Saddam because Saddam was funding terrorism and pursuing weapons of mass destruction, according to every intelligence agency on earth. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't have turned the country back over to the Iraqis as soon as humanly possible, instead of sticking around and pouring hundreds of thousands of more troops in there. So he's been called a nation-building neocon for a while, and that's not true. He wasn't in favor of the Arab Spring, for example. He is not averse to leaving American allies who happen to be dictators in power. He was in favor of leaving Hosni Mubarak in power in Egypt. So he is not a democracy-first neocon in that sense. So people are mischaracterizing the situation. Democrats, of course, are going nuts over this. Chris Matthews, now they say that John Bolton, look at that mustache. Look at John Bolton. I get over here, rumple my hair, suits all wrinkled. I just roll in here and I do a show. John Bolton, that guy even has a mustache, though. And I said to my wife, Kathleen, you even like mustache? She said, no. MSM Harbaugh, go.
John Bolton, Mr. Hawk, because he promised the working men and women of those states that voted for him, the gritty factory workers and other people who didn't like these wars because their kids do all the fighting and getting killed and losing their legs and everything else. He said to them, no more stupid wars. Now he brings in the godfather of stupid wars, John Bolton. Anyway, the congressman has been with us. Thank you so much, Eric Swalwell of California.
He's the godfather of stupid wars, John Bolton. It was John Bolton's fault. John Bolton was like Undersecretary of State for Near East Affairs or something like at the time. So, again, the idea that John Bolton was the architect of the Iraq War is just not true.